Hey everyone, welcome to the AutoMarketplace podcast. Today we have Harvir Singh joining us. Harvir can introduce himself, but on a high level, Harvir and his father share a yellow cab, and his father owns a Medallion. So I'll let you kind of take it from there, Harvir.
Hi, Dawood. So my father's been driving since the early 90s. I started in 2017, but we've been driving. We bought the Medallion in 2019, and we've been driving together on that Medallion for almost 7 years now. And so I work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm in the cab 5:30 a.m. Back at home like midnight. And my father, he works from 11 p.m. to midnight. So the car is being used every day, 13, 14 hours at least a day. And you know, that's the schedule we've kept for the past 7 years.
So just to summarize, so
Hmm.
you're not doing day night shift, or maybe I missed that. You're basically doing, you do some days and he does other days, basically.
Yeah, it's just full days because we tried the split where the 5 to 5 splits, but there's just that period of when there's high volume customers that we miss out on when we're trying to find each other for the switch. So we just thought, all right, we'll just do the full day, and then we'll just trade off days. So I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He does the rest of the week, but we're working without breaks.
Ah, okay, got it. And then just so people, that's really interesting actually. And then just so people understand, as some people might know, the TLC limits, I think, drivers, I think it's like 10 or 12 hours per day
Of customer time.
of customer time. Exactly. So what you're saying is that within the day, you're kind of taking, like, how does that look like within the day to bridge to the 12 hours of customer time? Or does it vary?
It doesn't, we like, I've rarely hit that 10-hour or even gotten close to that 10-hour customer limit time. The only time it's happened is like if it's Eid. So it's like not a lot of, like 50% of the drivers are off. So it's incredibly busy. And I hit that 10-hour by maybe 10 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock. So those are only days where it's incredibly busy that the 10-hour limit does come into play. But if that 10-hour limit does come into play, that means it's busy. So it doesn't really matter. But
Okay.
yeah,
No, that's,
mhm.
no,
But yeah,
it's almost like you're almost kind of going to well, the next question I have basically is that, and before we like kind of conclude the introduction, is that you said you got into the business in 2019 with your father?
20, 2017, I started driving yellow. We were leasing for 2 years, but 2019 we bought the Medallion, and that's what we've been doing since.
And so I think that's a really interesting time period to buy Medallion. So you don't have to give the whole like
Hmm.
pre-2017 what your father yourself might have been doing, but what like 2019 was, the Medallion was at that time pre-pandemic distress. How did you and your father think to buy it, or like what was that genesis from getting into the business in 2017, which the yellow cab, I don't want to go on too much of a monologue, but the yellow
Hmm.
cab business was kind of out, it's a kind of extremely distressed in 2017. How did you think to get into it at that point?
So our understanding at the time, or the conclusion we came to at that time, was that it's can't get worse. But then, of course, 2020 happens, and it did get worse. The prices, I think, it went down to 75,000 medallions were being sold. So maybe if we had waited 12 months, we could have gotten a much better deal. But you can't predict
Yeah. You
anything.
didn't predict the pandemic?
No, unfortunately
Um,
not.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, so I don't know how comfortable you are sharing the details, but can you give us a range of in 2019, what were the prices of medallions? Did you buy it in cash? Did you get financing? Like, how did that look in 2019?
Well, I wish I was, uh, knowledgeable as I am. I'm a bit more knowledgeable now than I was in 2019. My father did most of the negotiations, so I just came to read the papers. Uh, at that time, I don't know what the cash price was for the medallions, but the financing was 220. That's how much we got it for.
Got it. And then with the terms of, because I think that's going to set up kind of a later discussion we're getting
Hmm.
get into the terms of that financing. How did they look? Because in 2019, interest rates were really low. Like, what were the
It,
terms of that financing, and like how much do you have to put? I don't know what details you know, but how much was the down payment? What terms did you get? Was there like a balloon payment? Like, how did those financing terms looked in 2019?
it was 5% down, 5% interest, 5-year balloon, and 25-year amortization was the first schedule.
So okay, so like just okay, that's very interesting. So it's like if it was 220 and it was
Hmm.
5% down, you're talking like $11,000 down, 5% interest. And just for the non-technical people, it's basically being amortized over 25 years like a mortgage, but the full
Hmm.
amount of the principal balance is due after 5 years. And the assumption is you're gonna refinance it. At that time, how did you think about that? Did you just say, well, this market's going to improve in the year 2024, we'll be able to refinance it? Like, how were you thinking about that?
So we at that time we weren't thinking, we bought it for 220, it's gonna go to 440 in 5 years or anything like that. The mindset was that you know, it's an investment. So, somebody breaks a leg. If you're leasing, you can't do anything. But if you own a medallion, you break a leg, you can lease it out and at least get something while you're not working. So that was like one of the things that we factored in. And it's just, we also prefer to be the owners of medallions rather than leasing as well.
And then no, that makes a lot of sense. So then and
Mm-hmm.
then just to kind of fully understand the origin story, it sounds like from 2017 to 2019, you and your father were tested, like kind of
Yeah.
testing out the yellow cab, seeing what the earnings were from 2017 to 2019. How did that look? Like, what were the lease rates like? Were you earning enough? Was that kind of like the genesis of why you thought, okay, I'm paying this much in a lease and I might as well just buy the medallion? Is that was
So
developed?
yeah, so like the lease was 1,100, so it's 4,400 a month basically, and that's buying a medallion was much less than that. The car and the mortgage of the medallion, it was 22, and then the insurance, it all came around like 3,000. So we're saving over $1,000 a month that way. But also like when I received my license in 2016 November, so I drove a green cab actually for like a month and a half. Uh, and the first day I actually made $17. So I was, what I might have made the wrong decision to get into this field. But in February, like a couple months after that, in 2017, is when we started leasing the yellow cab, and that was Ford Escape 1,100 a month,
And that was
1,100 a
it.
week.
And that was in 2017. So there were still like that was at the height of Uber and
Yeah,
Lyft, like expanding. You're
yeah.
basically saying that even paying $1,100 a month, sorry, a week, you could still like how much were you if you don't mind me asking, how much were you netting at that time? Like in a good week, like you paid 1,100 in 2017, Uber and Lyft are at its height. Like, could you make double that lease, or what were you left with kind of after paying the lease and the gas and the insurance and all the expenses, leasing it?
So at that time, I was working from like 5:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. I was making maybe like 1,200 a week. And then my father, so my father and I, we worked together, right? So at that time, my earnings were paying the lease, and then his earnings were the gravy. So that's how we did it. So, and his earnings were maybe like 2,000 ish.
And was he driving more? Is that why his earnings were a little bit
Yeah.
more?
So he was working so I was working 5:36 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then he would be working from like 2:30 to 11,
Yeah.
12.
This is really interesting because how I'm kind of thinking about it, 2017, Uber and Lyft are kind of, as you know, like at their height of their domination, the yellow cab's losing market share. You're basically leasing a yellow cab for 1,100 bucks between you and your father. You're, let's say, making, like you said, 3,300, 3,500. You're paying 1,100 for the lease. So let's say a double shifted yellow cab, like let's say you were working as much as your father, you could be earning netting, let's say 2,500 to 3,000. So each person would be like 1,000 to 1,500 kind of post lease.
Hmm.
And then
About.
does that include like the cost of gas or that is before gas?
I thought we drove a Ford Escape, and the gas prices it was almost nothing. It was a hybrid, so at daily maybe $15-20. It was very cheap to run that
Hmm.
car.
Okay, so no, that's super interesting. Okay, so we have this 2017, 2019.
Hmm.
You've bought the Medallion. Now, I guess to bridge to today, I think we got to talk about what happened during the pandemic and how did you kind of navigate that?
So we worked until like the shutdown was announced. So we saw in January, like when I was working, I saw the gradual decline from January and January into February, then into March. It's just like from maybe like 70%, 80% to 100%, just completely eliminated business. And the shutdown happened. And for the first 2 3 months, we had to rely on unemployment. So we had to, budget and base the earnings, based our living expenses from what the unemployment was, from what our savings were. So that time was, there was zero. We were still paying. We didn't like do any deferments for the car payments, or we did one deferment for the Medallion payment, but all of the months we paid. So it was just unemployment and savings.
And on that point, so you're still making the more, so I guess to go into details for that, there was like you said, there was a 5 year. So this loan was kind of good, had monthly payments till 2024. What did the 5% equate to with like, it was roughly what, like a $205,000 loan in 2019 and then amortizing. What were your monthly payments looking like at that time?
11, just under 1,200.
A month.
Yeah, 1,200 a month, just under, like
Got it.
1145, 1130,
And
around
that
that.
and that and that was mostly interest weighted because it was
Yeah.
amortizing over 25 years.
Yeah, so
So you
by
paid,
20 mhm. By
no,
2024, the balance was like 180s, 188, something like that. So not
by,
much.
by 2024.
2024, like the when the first balloon ended.
Got it, got it. And okay, so we're gonna go into so in 2020, you were just paying via unemployment or via other, income. You weren't basically you were paying the mortgage, the Medallion mortgage, but it wasn't from taxi driving or earnings, basically.
From March to maybe July, August. Yeah, it was like that.
Okay. And then so when did you start like getting those taxi drivers' earnings back? Like you
September.
September?
Yeah,
Got it.
September. September we went back to work.
Yeah. And I forgot to ask you, like, what car did you buy to attach your Medallion to?
Nissan NV200.
Wave? Like wheelchair
Yeah,
accessible.
wheelchair.
Okay. And was the Medallion you bought like wave only, or was it like selected, non-selected, where you could attach a non-wave to it, or what was the
We can select a
structure?
non-wave, but we can't do that now for maybe another year or two. But uh it was wave in that term, and then the next one we can do whichever.
Okay, cool. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So you survive the pandemic, the yellow cab industry starts recovering. Now this balloon payment comes in 2024. How does that look? Like what like are is the same lender still willing to lend to you? Like obviously the Medallion market has recovered, but it's still arguably you can get into well, how is the market at that point in your mind and what was your lender saying to you?
So in 2021, 2022 were maybe the busiest months or years, because there was a lack of drivers. So it's like maybe out of like whatever 13,000 medallions, only 6,000 are on the road. So there was that supply and demand. You're making more money that way. But in terms of like the negotiations for 2024, uh, they offered us uh, again, the 8 year or 2 years. And then it was my understanding, I didn't know at that time that every time you renegotiate a balloon, the amortization goes back to zero, the schedule. So at that in 2024, I thought, okay, they're doing 1 year, 10 year balloon, sorry, 10 year amortization, 1 year balloon. We do the 1 year, negotiate again. Our schedule would be at year two, not at year zero. That's what I thought in 2024. 2025 happens, and I'm looking at the paperwork, and I'm seeing, I finally realized that the amortization resets. So if we keep doing balloon payments of 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, this can go out for a lot longer than initially agreed on, and you're making like 70% mostly interest payments. So that's the realization I had um, earlier this year, and that's what I've been trying to find a resolution for.
No, this is super interesting, kind of what you're saying. So just to summarize what you're saying, and I think you've said it in a way that everybody understands, as you're saying, back in 2019, when you bought the Medallion, like you said, you got let's say, to make the math simple, 220 to buy the Medallion and then like a 210 loan, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that basically, you have a monthly payment, most of its interest, interest, some of its principal because it's amortized on 25 years. And then you have a 5 year balloon payment. Then in 2024 comes, you're down to, like you said,
80 something.
80 something thousand. And you're basically saying the new terms of the deal is like you're resetting the amortization. So the new payments you make are still going to be interest heavy versus principal. And you
Mm-hmm.
assume that it would be like a continuation, like maybe the amortization schedule either got shortened from 25 to 20, or is that what you were assuming, that basically you
I
wouldn't
would.
again
Mhm.
refinance it at a 25-year amort?
So like my assumption at that time in 2024 was, okay, so they're giving us a 1 year, 10 year loan, 1 year balloon. 2034 will be done, right? But that's not I understand. Once I realized this in 2025, earlier this year, that's not how it works. Every year you negotiate, you restart. The interest payment schedule restarts at zero. So it's not 2034 you're going to be done. It could be much later.
And were there, no, that's super helpful, but were there prepayment penalties? So somebody like who's watching this saying like, oh, couldn't you just accelerate the payment? So if your minimum payment was like a mortgage, for example, if your
Mm-hmm.
minimum payment was 1,100, you may be in a house mortgage you get is 30 years. Let's say you want
Mm-hmm.
to pay the house mortgage in 15 years. You can just accelerate the payment. Now, the only difference between a medallion debt and a house mortgage is there's no balloon payment on
Yeah.
at least American mortgages. And so did you ever think about acceleration, or was there some sort of penalty to that?
There's no early prepayment. You have to give, if you want to like do a complete uh payoff, you have to give
Yeah.
them a month notice, I believe. It's in the contract. But again, like it's my, I guess, lack of understanding of the balloon contract that had I known, you do a 5 year balloon, I would have paid 1,000 extra every month,
Yeah.
and
You
that would have cut down immensely the principal
is this,
balance.
and by the way, you're obviously a very smart guy. You're not the only one who is probably thinking like that. Your basic assumption was like 25-year amort, 5 year balloon. At the refi, it'd be 20-year amort. Then at the next refi, it'd be 15-year amort. Then at
Yeah.
the next refi, bill
So
10-year
like
amort.
2019, 24, 25 years, like 2044.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2044. That's my understanding. That was my understanding. 2024, 2044 is the done date, the payoff date. So that's what that was the assumption I was working on.
So in the midst of this, and I know the Medallion guys will say, well, how about the MRP Plus program? Didn't you participate in MRP Plus or anything like that? As a background, as we just discussed, you're a little bit of a different kind
Mm-hmm.
of participant in this market because you didn't buy the Medallion for 1 million or 600,000. Although you and your father are basically individual owner operators, What happened during MRP Plus? Because just as people background, let's say a driver had $400,000 of debt, a deal was cut, Marblegate let it, but other lenders signed on. And you know this obviously, Harvir, but
Mm.
just for our audience, basically everything was solved down to 200,000. Then the city gave a $30,000 payment. So everybody's debt, who was an individual owner operator, I think it was 6 or fewer medallions, got their debt cut down to 170,000 or 175,000. How about you? Because you're like in this interesting position where you have like 180 something thousand of debt. So didn't you and your father qualify for that, or what happened?
So in 2024 and in 2025, I worked with for the renegotiations. I worked with NYLAG, with their attorneys. So in 2024, the lender, Medallion Financial, flat out rejected participating in the MRP Plus. But in 2025, they were willing to participate, and a new lender had come in, but they only agreed uh, to a balance of 100,000. So you had to get the loan balance down to 100,000. And to do that, we Medallion in 2025 offered a 5% discount, and then combined with the TLC offering 30,000, we would have to pay out the difference to get down to 100,000. Medallion agreed, we agreed, we sent the paperwork to TLC. They rejected it, saying that the ratio that we were paying as part of getting down to 100,000, which was much more than the discount Medallion was offering, and they rejected the MRP Plus. So we went back. The NYLAG attorney went back, spoke with Medallion's representatives, telling them what happened, asked them, "Hey, can you give us 11%, 9%, anything that would help us go back to TLC and get this deal done?" And they wouldn't budge. They wouldn't budge from 5%. Like I even offered like a a side deal where uh you guys stick to 5%, just give us the cut, so the TLC sees that's a good ratio, but we'll send you a check for like $20,000. So we offered that, but they wouldn't they wouldn't budge at 5%. They wouldn't work with anything.
And so just so I understand that, who you're saying the person who's rejecting the deal is Medallion Financial is rejecting the deal, or TLC is rejecting the deal?
TLC is rejecting the deal that we accepted with the 5%. But then when you go back and tell Medallion TLC is rejecting it, we have to adjust the terms so TLC could accept it. Then Medallion is saying, no, we're not going to move from 5%.
And 5% mean 5% discount
Discount.
on the
Yeah.
debt. So if you had, let's say we use the number 180,000. So
Mm-hmm.
you're saying like a 9,000, so $9,000 of debt forgiveness.
Yeah.
And in return, just to summarize the deal, this is super interesting because I think you might have been like in a very unique situation given when you entered the market and given that your debt was at about the level of the forgiveness of the
Mm-hmm.
MRP plus baseline floor. You're saying the original deal was Medallion Financial said, okay, we'll accept a 5% debt discount. Not the end of, I mean, easy for me to say, I guess, but not the end of the world. 180,000, goes down to 171,000.
So I do want to make a clarification
Yeah.
that the TLC MRP plus guidelines
Yeah.
say that the discount has to come down so the loan becomes 170. So like that's where Medallion got to 5%. They just want to get it
Oh, I
right at
see.
the
Got it.
threshold.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that actually makes more sense. So you're saying
Yeah.
that we're gonna match to the 170 where everybody else gets done. The only difference
Yeah.
here is you were already so close at 180. So they said,
Yeah.
okay, to match to 170, we have to give them a 5% discount. And then,
Yeah. So it's like
oh,
175. So 175, 5% down. It's like
yeah,
167, 8, something like that.
yeah,
And that's when the 30,000 is discounted and then out of pocket from us to get to
another
100.
38. Okay, so
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. So debt forgiveness to 175, then they get like a 30,000 payment from the
Mm-hmm.
MRP plus, and then
Debt forgiveness to 170. 170, you have to get below, at least to 100. That's what the TLC website says, 170. So if someone has a balance of like 250 and they want to participate in MRP plus, the lender has to, or the lender or something has to be worked out, so that the principal balance gets to 170. And like we were at 176, 175, something like that. And then, Medallion said,
What's interesting about your
mm-hmm.
case is that let's say a driver had $400,000 of debt or 500,000.
Mm-hmm.
How they solved it vanilla is they would forgive to 200,000,
Yeah.
and then the TLC would make a payment of 30,000 to bridge to 170,000, as you know, because you were below the $200,000 threshold. This is kind of like a quirky situation where you're above 170, but you're below 200,000. But the deal they made was you get down to 170,000. So Medallion Financial forgives it to 170,000. And then the TLC would then make the $30,000 payment to them.
So the way that the NYLAG attorney understood it, and like I understood it, was that as long as you have the principal balance of 170, then you can do the MRP plus deal. And that's, like we filled out the paperwork with that assumption, and we sent it over to TLC with that assumption. But then TLC comes back to us saying the ratio's off.
I see what you're saying. They're saying that the ratio's off in terms of your contribution or
compared to the lenders.
to compare to the lenders, and they wanted the lender's contribution is 9,000, they're getting 30,000. That's what they were saying, which is fair enough. I guess by the TLC's perspective, I can understand it. But what you told the TLC is like, okay, Medallion Financial wants to get the debt down to 100,000, so we are coming out of pocket. So if it's like 170,000.
No, Medallion doesn't want to get to 100. There's I'm forgetting the name of the lender that participated in 2025. Something with an A.
Accompany?
Accompany, yes, Accompany. Yeah. They would only accept the loans if the balance was 100,000. So that was the 100,000 was a requirement by Accompany. 170 was a requirement by TLC.
Okay, and so then I know some people. This is actually super interesting. So, but I guess long story medium, this whole deal fell apart. Basically, you got no debt forgiveness.
Yeah, zero.
Okay.
So we're in a 2-year balloon now. And then, we have to see what we can do in the next year and a half.
Okay. So now how does that, so because you were on time with your payments and everything, what was the new offer? Because obviously in 2019, interest rates were much lower. One could argue that, I mean, by 2024, the Medallion market, the yellow cab market was recovering. What terms did they offer you in terms of the refinancing? Like, how did that look? So as comparison, in 2019, you said 25-year amort, 5% interest rate, roughly $1,100 of monthly payments. What did it look like now in 2024?
So right now, the monthly is at $2,579. So almost 2.5 extra time multiple. And the terms, there were two terms offered. One was a 1-year balloon, one was a 2-year balloon. And then actually there was another term where if we paid off $35,000, made a $35,000 lump payment, then we would get half a point off the loan. So instead of 9%, 8.5%. And but the 2-year term, 2-year and the 1-year, it's 8%. Sorry, 9%. 9% terms is the same thing. So we just went with 2 years.
So so the new terms were, did you say, I missed 10-year amort, you said?
8-year. 8-year amortization, 2-year balloon or 1-year balloon.
Got it. Okay, so 8-year amortization, 2-year balloon. So basically the 2,500 so it's a double the payment, like you said, but a lot of that it's more principal heavy.
Yeah.
But
no, yes, more principal. But no, sorry, more interest heavy.
Because the interest rate also went up from 5% to
9%. So it went from 5 to 9, and then also it's like a new loan, so it's front loaded with interest. So right now our principal is maybe like 800, 900, maybe sometimes some months is 1,000, but like so let's 60, say 70 is interest.
In a weighted average over 1 year, the principal balance right now is going to go down by 10,000 if you make these payments.
Around.
around that, give or take. So you're basically making 2,500. Let's say you're making $30,000 in payments.
Hmm.
20,000 go to interest. And this is obviously rough math. Obviously, we can do a
Yeah.
mortgage calculator, but you're saying like two-thirds of the $30,000 in payment is interest, and one-third is going to the principal balance. So okay, so you did a 2-year balloon.
Yes.
What's how many years have passed on this new refi?
It's from September, so four
Okay,
months.
4 months have passed. Got it. Now, this is, I think, where a lot of people be interested. You have not a lot of debt. You are on time with Medallion Financial. You have a really good record. Was there no new lender who is willing to refi you out or structure a deal with you? Like
I looked.
Marblegate or someone like that?
I reached out to Marblegate actually. They were more adamant uh, on selling me their medallion. So they were offering to sell me their medallion at 175,000. At again 5%, 5-year balloon, 25-year amortization, similar type of deal. But I told them I have a loan on my that's about the same in balance of what you guys are selling. If you guys want to take over the loan, it'll be the same thing as you guys selling me the medallion. And the person I spoke with, he spoke with his manager, and the response I got in September was that currently at the moment, they don't have the appetite to do that. So
So I think what you're confirming, and for our audience, I think this is, by the way, thank you so much for this detail. I think this detail is like available nowhere. So
yeah.
Harvir, I appreciate you sharing this, but it's going to be helpful, hopefully to you and hopefully to others. Basically, right now, the medallion market has no new lenders. The only thing lenders are willing to do is kind of seller financing or, or refinancing their own medallions like Medallion Financial did for you.
Hmm.
But what you were looking for is you were consistent with your payments through the pandemic, right? Which is
Only one or two we deferred.
okay,
One,
deferred.
sorry, one we
Yeah,
deferred one medallion payment, two car
yeah.
payments, but medallion only one was
Okay.
deferred even in the
So you never
pandemic.
went in severe delinquency, which is usually like 90 days plus or anything like that. You
No.
always, and that was the pandemic. That was like like a meteorite type of situation for the yellow cab, and you were still kind of consistent with you. So Medallion Financial like was bullish enough on like your ability to repay them. So how you think about it right now? So okay, you got this 2-year balloon, you're paying the $2,500. Let's go back to how we started. What are earnings looking like now between you and your father versus kind of compared to, 2017, 2019? Has it gone up? Because at one point, like you said, in 21 and 2022, yes, yellow cab trips overall were down, but the supply was less. So there was
Yeah.
yes, yellow cab trips, sorry, less yellow cab trips, but less supply. Now yellow cabs can do Uber, maybe
Hmm.
Lyft soon.
Hmm.
How is, let's get into now the details of like how the business is looking now. So what is that looking like in terms of earnings? And, we'll start from there.
Earnings have been going up. I would say that. Like even like I read your Substacks and you see like the percentage of market share just consistently going up from I think it was like 12% to now 16%, and that's reflected in our earnings as well. So uh, if you look at our earnings this September compared to 2024, this October 2024, each month has been up from the year prior, and that's also a lot. It also has a lot to do with us taking Uber trips as well. So if there's a dead period on the street, an Uber trip comes on, we will accept that. And that's that. It might be a little to do with that, and a little to do with just yellow cab overall trips going up as well.
So I want to double click on how the Uber thing functionally works from the driver side. Because
Hmm.
like the other day I called an Uber X and I got a yellow cab. It wasn't like a Uber cab option. And on your side, correct me if I'm wrong, it's actually Curb who's dispatching it to you. I guess we'll start. Is that correct? Like you actually don't have the Uber app open, the Uber driver app. You have the Curb app open, or is that an incorrect understanding?
So in the yellow cab, there's a tablet and on the tablet is where you see the dispatches. But on the tablet, they're separated. So a curb dispatch would show curb, and then an Uber would show Uber.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
this is I didn't know that. So do you have like an Uber driver's app or is it just like attached to this tablet?
It's attached to the tablet and the taxi cab, and then those earnings get sent to where, the Street Hill credit card earnings would go into the business bank account.
Okay,
So,
got it. And so
mhm.
like let's say you do let me ask you this. This would be interesting. So in a are you still working the same way with your father? Like you're doing the shifts in that way? Is that relatively what you're doing now or did you switch that up where you do the day where you're still working the same way essentially? Like you do Monday, Wednesday, Friday and your father does the other days?
Mhm. So yeah, it's just those
Yeah.
days, long hours.
So let's say you have out of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, what would you say is the busiest days and how many trips would you get on that day? Let's as an example.
So like it's like our schedules are a bit different, especially mine. Like most drivers that I speak with, they do work long hours, but they're working like 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. But I'm working, more on the more earlier, more later. So my trips per day are usually around 30, 40, but I'm working again like 17, 18 hours a day.
So
So
yeah. So
it's
no,
different for the others.
yeah, and so just like you explained it, you're on the road for 17, 18 hours a day, but the passenger time is like 8 to 10 hours kind of thing.
Yeah.
So okay,
Passenger time is out.
so let's say like you do 30 trips in a busy day. What percentage of those trips have you seen are coming from Curb or Uber? Obviously it varies, but like of those 30 trips, how many are being dispatched by like a e-hail provider, Curb or
Well,
Uber?
they get dispatched a lot, but I'll accept maybe 5 to 7 a day. But they're always getting dispatched. Like, just to be transparent, like sometimes you're on 42nd Street, for example. It's a two-way street, and you can't make a U-turn there. So if I get dispatched an Uber trip that's on the other side of the street and it's going as well to the other side where I have to make a U-turn, I can't accept that. So I do accept trips that, I can get to uh, without making a U-turn or without, taking long to get there.
I get that's super interesting. So you're saying out of the 30 trips, if it's 5 to 7, you're
Hmm.
basically saying like 20-ish, 15 to 25% of your trips roughly, or like one every six to one in every four trips are e-hails. Is that fair?
E-hail, Uber, yeah.
And is it Uber or is it Curb? Mostly it's coming from Uber.
I'll say this, Curb, their GPS is terrible. So they like with Uber, you get a trip dispatched, it's a block away, it's 2 blocks away. With Curb, you get dispatched, it's like 10, 12 blocks away. So you have to accept if you accept the Curb trip, you're driving 10, 12 blocks, and you might see a person street hailing in that time you're getting to the trip.
And
So
and
so that's less likely to get accepted. Should I turn on
and
the light?
Yeah, no, no, go for it. Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's perfect. That's perfect. So that's actually a super interesting point. You're saying that the curb, when you say curb, because you have this one tablet, and the tablet is giving you all the e-hails, whatever, like this T or whatever it's technically called, is
Hmm.
giving you like Uber and curb trips. And your point basically, and I think people understood it, but just to repeat it for people, is that you can tell that Uber's GPS in the background saying like, okay, like they're pinpointing where you're at and giving you an e-hail very like efficiently that's close by or on your way. And you're saying
Hmm.
curb is like giving you an e-hail like 5 blocks away, the opposite like direction
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. They're
So
lacking in that
they're
in that
lacking.
regard.
But most of the e-hails are coming from Uber then, if you can see the like Uber versus curb.
Hmm.
Like
Most of
of
the
those, yeah.
accepted e-hails are coming from Uber.
Okay, so of those, like let's say you have 30 trips and you accept six, just to make it like 20%. How many of the six e-hail trips are you doing are Uber versus Curb?
Almost all Uber. A
Oh,
Curb,
all
you'll
Uber.
rarely like Curb. I have like if I'm in the city, it's very hard to get a good Curb trip. Sometimes, like if you're on the Upper East Side, it's an airport trip. they offer good rates, and if it's slow. And I also check, there's a website where you can check the waiting time at airports. So if I see the waiting time at the airports is low, I do accept those type of curb trips where they're going to LaGuardia from like East End to LaGuardia. They're offering $40. That's still less than street hail, but I'll accept that because I see that LaGuardia is busy. And that
And
trip, just for drivers listening, they might not know. If you just go to PANYNJ and put taxi next to it, it should be like the first link. Support Authority tracks and shows you the waiting times for at the airports.
no, that's super helpful. And I'll try to find that link myself and put it in the description.
Mm-hmm.
So on these e-hails, I guess the next question is, how do the e-hails pay versus the street hails? Like, do you see the commission Uber is
I don't
taking?
see like what the customer is paying, but I have asked the customers. Sometimes I'll ask the customers, how much are you paying? And there is like the cut, like the cut for drivers is around 60%. So that 40% that the customers pay extra, that doesn't show up on my tablet. So for example, if like the customer is paying $100, right? On the tablet, I'll see a $60 trip around. So I
So you
wouldn't see what they're
so
paying.
the meter isn't running basically. It's just like
No,
and do they give you that number up front, like this is a $60 trip, or do you find out at the end?
upfront. Up like with I don't know if like the Uber drivers is the same thing, but for yellow cabs, you see the upfront, you see the trip total, the pickup and destination as well. The only thing you don't see is the name because there's like
Yeah, no.
discrimination.
Yeah, yeah. So
So that's
okay,
the
so,
only thing you
yeah.
don't see.
So then on the street hail, so if you do, let's say, of 30 trips, you do six are e-hails, what is like the average? I mean, this is like maybe an unfair question, or like versus like on average, what is an e-hail trip pay versus what is the street hail trip pay, would you say?
So I'll say this, like if a customer, like from the consumer side, a customer were to take an Uber uh versus a yellow cab from like East End to uh LaGuardia, for example, like let's say East End 80th Street to LaGuardia, on the street on street hail is maybe $60, around $60. And then Uber, it varies. But if most of the times they'll offer me from that area, 80th Street, East End to LaGuardia, maybe $40. That's the typical Uber rate that I get. Sometimes 35, 40, rarely. But I don't know, like on the consumer side, I don't know what they're paying most
So
of the time.
that's super. So you're basically saying Uber, like if you could, if there were enough street hails, you would just do street hails all day.
Yeah.
Because like you're saying you're not seeing the commission, but that's a really good example you use. You're saying like for the same trip, I do a street hail, I earn $60 from East End to LaGuardia. And if
Mm-hmm.
I got the same exact trip, like that was like be a $40 trip, which kind of implies that Uber or the government commission is like 35% or something. They're taking like for like versus a yellow cab, same trip, they're taking like 30% of
Yeah.
the fare is going to a party. How do you view, obviously you're happy that, Uber's in the ecosystem, but is it fair to say that you just when you would prefer to be like 30 trips, 30 street hails? Is that a fair comment?
I would much prefer street hills. Like if the city was busy, street hills, I would much prefer street hills.
And that's because there's just effectively there's no embedded commission in a street hail, especially since you own the Medallion. I mean, you got to pay the sales tax and everything, but that's not really a commission
Yeah.
that applies to Uber. But there's no additional dispatching commission. It's like driver
Yeah.
to passenger
So
kind
it's more like like right now we use Uber to just fill a gap, but uh we would rather not, just because of like on principle of having to work with a company that's effectively trying to replace you or nickel and dime you. So that's on principle. We would rather not work with
of.
that.
Have you seen like the number of street hail trips increasing? Like, or is it kind of flat or declining? Like, from the passenger side, are you just seeing more? Are you seeing I guess it's impossible for you to know on the e-hail side completely, but are street hails increasing now? Like, are you seeing that?
Yes, street hails are increasing. And also another thing is that a lot of the time I have noticed that people just don't know how to street hail. So I've been asked, uh, is there a taxi stand? Do we go to a taxi stand? They don't know that you just raise the hand. A lot of people don't, many people don't know that you just raise the hand, taxi comes to you. They think that there's a place you have to walk to, and then that's where you can pick a taxi. So there is that, lack of, I guess,
It,
information.
are
Or
these like people living in like like people living in New York
there
asking?
are Americans, not New Yorkers, but there are Americans.
They just don't know to hail a cat, like
Yeah,
physically, they don't understand like how it works.
no.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay.
Because it is like, especially like with how Uber's taken
Yeah.
out pretty much taxi businesses all across the world. New
Yeah.
York is a bit unique where it's still there. So I think it might be just that people, it doesn't exist in other parts of the world. So they don't know how it operates in New York.
And then how, is like you just kind of brought up a point I didn't even think about. Are taxi stands busy? Like I know you have a taxi stand in front of Penn Station, in front of well, yeah, Penn
Hmm.
Station, Moynihan on the side, the airports. Are you seeing the taxi stands getting busier, like especially at the airports, or is that like kind of flatlining? Like, how do you think about that?
The airports, it gets busy at night, but in the city, I don't usually stand at the taxi stands. I'll drive by Penn Station, and if there's a customer that hails me, I'll pick them up. But I usually don't. I don't stop at the taxi stands at Penn Station.
And before we move on to the next section,
Hmm.
and this is incredible insight. I can't like this is really, really good. Is we discussed in 2017 between you and your father, like let's say he was working a little bit more, you were paying for the lease, but let's say it's like 3,500 between the both of you. How much as a what is it looking like today? If you want to put in percentage terms, if that's more comfortable, like is it more, I would assume?
So it is more like the taxi number of taxi trips have gone down, but because of the fare increase, the the gross has the numbers, the actual revenue has gone up. So I'll give you the number. It's monthly combined on average gross. It's about I believe 20, around 4,000 a week. It's around 4,000 a week,
So they're from the
a bit
3,500,
more. Hmm.
the total earnings, the gross earnings have gone up, let's say 10 to 20, 10 to 15%, something like that.
Yeah,
Right. And then you can layer on inflation, all of that stuff. Okay,
yeah.
so getting into the math of, I guess we'll start out with this, and then we'll get into the math of being a Medallion owner, right? Do you still want to, that original thesis you guys had, you and your father had in 2017 or 2019, does that kind of thesis hold still? Like, are you thinking like, yes, I want to hold the Medallion, I want to ride this out, and this is more just like I want better financing terms? Like, are you still bullish on the Medallion? Obviously not financial advice, but are you still bullish on the Medallion?
I personally am. I personally am bullish, but I do because as long as there is that um exclusivity of having the street hail, I am bullish. But like when Waymo was authorized to drive around in New York, that was when I worried a bit. But then the more I watched the Waymo videos, the more I looked into Waymo, and I saw customers talking about the Waymo experience, how much they pay for Waymos. It's the same as Ubers, and then Ubers are priced at that point without having to worry about taking care of the cars, storing the cars. Well, Waymo is priced like that, uh, with that in mind, as well as also they're not charging customers a rate where they're break even or they're making profit. They're doing it just to uh, test the cars or test customer taste. So it's the prices you see right now are equivalent to Uber prices, but the prices you do see right now, they're not prices that would help Waymo be profitable.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very intelligent, insightful comment. And just so the audience knows, so Waymo's testing in New York City. They're not doing paid trips yet, but Harvir is correct that I think they got their permit recently extended. It's probably just, a matter of time before they get the official testing. Let
Hmm.
me ask you like a bit of a quirky question. Would you be, let's say AVs or whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, never, whatever the timeline is, if you knew that the Medallion was an AV license, would you be like, okay, like that's fine. The Waymo can come because I own a Medallion, or would you be like not as excited by that? Like, how do you think about that? Like there's some speculation around that, and there's real legislation around that or
Yeah,
proposed legislation.
there is like speculation as well as you see Marblegate, I guess, maneuvering for that outcome with what they're doing. But if there's legislation passes that says AV licenses have to be attached to medallions, that is good for us. But it also we don't know like what the maintenance cost would be for AV. Like who if there's an issue with the cameras, who foots the bill? Is it Google? Is it Waymo? Or do we have to pay out of pocket for that? And insurance, maybe it might go down. We don't know, but uh, ideally, I would prefer to drive a car that doesn't have all the bells and whistles. Like we drive a NV200. It has no sensors. The doors are manual. The back windows are manual. There's very little fail points. So ideally, a vehicle that would work best for a yellow cab driver would be a vehicle with as little maintenance costs as possible, as well as price of repair uh, is very little.
And so, like, and that's a really good point. We were talking about the medallion debt terms and everything like that. The NV200 that you bought, is it the same one you bought in 2019?
Yeah, 2019.
And it's wave or wheelchair accessible. Is it now paid off effectively or close to pay off?
It was paid off in 3 years after the 2022. So
2022. Okay, so in terms of your earnings, there's no car payment basically on that now. And
just maintenance.
how many miles does the NV200 have? And you think how much longer do you think it can go?
It has 220, but like it's a Nissan, so Nissans they have that I guess fail point at 300. Hopefully we get to 300, but
Okay.
ideally, until it literally breaks down. Once it breaks down a couple of times on the road, that's when we'll look into getting a new car.
And so am I wrong to say this because I like 80,000 incremental miles, it'll hit 300 in another 12 to 16 14 to 16 months, or like how many miles are you and your father putting on the car?
Like 40, 50 a year.
40, 50
40,
a year.
50 a
Okay.
year. It's a
So
lot of
yeah,
city
so
driving, city
a little like
miles.
basically in 14 to 16 months, it would hit like a year and a half. It would
Hmm.
hit the 300 and then you'd go for that.
And then
Okay.
we also have to see like the health of the car. If the car is still drivable, we'll keep it because it's also a wheelchair, so we can just if it could last 100 years, we can keep it driving. But um,
No,
in
no,
theory, as long as possible.
no, it makes sense. So, okay, so that's really interesting. Okay, so now in terms of just like the economics of it, just so because I think it's really nice to have someone on you because I think there's a lot of stuff on the internet or there's actually not a lot of stuff on the internet. It's either misinformation or just no information. And I think one thing we're trying to do is saying like, forget about what people are speculating about. Like this is a person who actually owns a medallion, who's driving, like this is firsthand knowledge, like
Yeah,
coming direct from the source. Let's
yeah.
say between you and your father, it's 4,000. I want to kind of just briefly talk about insurance. How much does so I guess how much does your insurance cost a month? I'll start with that.
So two drivers are on the insurance. It's 675 a month. And then there's workers' comp as well. That's 2,500 a year. So it's about what is that like 10,000 I guess combined a year.
Got it. And 675, does that include is that like 675 times 12 months, or you have to put a deposit down, then it's like you pay the 675 in 9 months? Like is the annual premium like 7,500, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Annual is 75.
got it. And what was the premium back in 2019? Or like, has it been about flat?
It's been the same. It's been the
Okay.
same 600s. It hasn't jumped, but I did see like Google recommended me a like a Bloomberg article saying that next year, uh, taxi insurance rates could jump 50-60% or something like that. But it said taxi. I don't know if it said Uber rates or I'm
Yeah, no,
assuming it's taxi and Uber.
that's interesting. We're right. That was breaking news that Bloomberg got. Is that it's going to increase 25%, I think, over a 3-year period.
Yeah, 25. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that will hit taxis because, as you know, I assume your insurance is from American Transit.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think everybody's going to experience that increase. But I think what you're saying is interesting because basically the inflation that I kind of run a Uber fleet. So I've been experiencing like 7 or 8% insurance inflation a year for the past
Mm,
5, but the individual driver has had basically like it's not that much inflation. Insurance inflation has been occurring since, 2019. And then, it's kind of an interesting data point that basically the insurance premium that you paid in 2019 is about the same, as you're paying right now.
hmm.
And so like outside of insurance, so okay, if you're grossing 4,000 and you're paying, let's say with the workers' compensation and the insurance, let's say that takes another 750 off or something like that.
Hmm.
What is your other major expenses? You said gas is not, well, you said that actually gas about the Ford Escape. How much are you paying for gas on the Nissan
Like
NV?
$30 a day. So it's much more.
Okay, and you're driving this, you and your father are driving this effectively 6 days a week, essentially.
12 days. Sorry, 7 days.
7 days a week. Okay, so $30
Two.
a day times 30. So like let's call it a thousand, probably you want to round up like $1,000 a month of gas.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that gives insight. Okay, so kind of as we it's so interesting. Like you're saying so many interesting things. So I have this agenda, and we're going through a lot of it, and you're bringing up really interesting points. I guess like what is on your mind these days? Like what is most as you're driving this yellow cab, as you and your father have this investment? I guess the first question I'll ask you, and maybe there's a way to bring it up, would you buy another medallion today, or would you just like kind of keep this one and kind of
I would buy another medallion, but I do need like one of my the purpose of me speaking with you is hopefully there's more interest with from lenders, and one of the reasons like the medallion prices that I believe have remained flat more or less in the last 4 or 5 years is because there's a lack of lenders. The only lenders you have, or most of the is companies like Marblegate or private brokers who are lending it out 50% down payment, 10-15% interest. Those that's not going to help increase the values of medallions. You need speculation, and to have speculation, you need institution money, banks. They have to look into the economics of medallions because right now a typical lease is between $700 to $1,000 a week. So if they work with that math, a year, let's say 1,000, $52,000. So if a bank or institution looks into this business, all right, we can make $52,000 a year, cut cut repairs, cut insurance, workers' comp. Maybe that's 20,000, 30,000. So you're investing under $200,000 on something, and that's yielding you $30,000 and pretty much dividends, basically dividends. And with that speculation, the value of the medallions would appreciate as well. So that's what I'm hopeful. That's my bull case. All right, uh, institutions seeing value in medallions. Because one more thing I did see like a week ago, because I'm on the Weibo subreddit, on Reddit, and they're zealots. But once in a while, you do see them post something that's interesting. So one post I saw was a report by Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley, who's an investor in Waymo, they put out this report where they project Uber's market share from going from now 70% to by 2034 going to 30%. So when an institution puts out this report, it should be doom and gloom, right, for Uber. But Uber's stock price market cap, it's still, I think it's over 100 billion. So you don't really see that reflected. So if what they're saying, Morgan Stanley saying is true, where Uber's going to lose market share from 70 to 30, investors should be looking at, who benefits, who doesn't. And personally, I do think that the battle between Uber and Waymo, with that in that battle, that spending battle, yellow cabs are uh, who will benefit.
So I think that's a lot of interesting stuff you said there. I guess on the first part, just so like I think a lot of people know that there's a cash price for medallions right now, which is let's say 115,
Yeah.
sometimes 120, and then there's a finance price, which is like 175. I think 10 Fed might have a deal out there. To your point, that's like maybe more down, but it's like 130, 140, 150.
Mm-hmm.
What you're basically saying is right now, if you said you would buy a medallion, are you saying you need more institutional money that gives financing at that cash price? Is that what you're basically saying?
We What I'm saying, first I need to, fix or find a solution for the first medallion. I need to like have an understanding. All right, there's a long-term loan. We have a set price. We can budget for the next 10, 15, whatever years that we need to budget for. Like I can't budget for something that every 2 years, every 1 year, there's something you have to negotiate. You don't know what the negotiations would come out to be. So that sort of uncertainty, I have to find a resolution for. And then once that resolution is found, that's when I would look to buy a new medallion.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Your main problem right now is that this 2 year balloon is looming over you. You
Yeah.
just kind of just need a lender to take care
Mm-hmm.
of that, and then you would be willing to, for example, to take up Marblegate's offer of 175. You know, whatever the amort is. Whether it's 25 or 10 years or 15 years. You basically would say like that's actually not a bad deal. I wouldn't mind paying the finance price. You're just saying that I first need to kind of solve this 2 year balloon issue.
Yeah. Like with any deal, I would need to have an understanding and then schedule, because every business you have to like have a 5 year, 10 year plan. And then, I don't have that. I have this balloon looming every 2 years. I can't do anything to build these 5 year plans, 10 year plans.
Got it. And as you get that balance down, it'll be interesting. Like, let's say your balance at the next balloon, the principal balance is like, down to 140 or 150. You never
Hmm.
like, hopefully the lenders out there, and we have an audience that I know, hopefully they're watching this, are in the medallion business, are in the lending business. Hopefully they hear someone like you and saying like, okay, like if we're getting seller financing to a brand new driver, like someone who has this track record, like let's just refi him out and give him the same deal with a less principal balance. And then so your concern is not so much about the cash finance dynamics. You actually are okay with that. You're just really looking for someone to refi, like basically give you a nice refi. Like that kind of new. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, on your Waymo point in terms of Uber and Lyft losing market share, you're basically saying the yellow cab is the beneficiary because you have the license. Whether Uber wins, whether Waymo wins, whether Tesla wins, they need your license. Is that how you're kind of thinking about that?
Not only that, but it's also like uh I don't know. I don't know if your podcast talk gets into politics that much, but Zoran Mamdani is elected the next 4 years, ideally, which are going to be important for Waymo and Uber because they're trying to make inroads into the city. They will try to make inroads, and they have to work with a guy like Zoran Mamdani who has openly campaigned for yellow cab drivers, had openly made these proclamations where I am with you. He said that when referring to yellow cab drivers. So you have that faith that you have a voice in in an administration that's going to pretty much dictate how your industry is shaped. And you're hopeful that this individual is going to make any policy that's worker friendly,
Yeah, no,
as
I
long
think
as mhm.
no, sorry, go for it.
So as worker friendly and also that's fair to the consumer.
Yeah, no, I think, inherently we have to, if you're in this business, we don't talk politics for the sake of talking politics. Just the politics of the city just has a direct impact on the business, whether it's releasing TLC plates, whether it's TIF, whether it's the surcharges, whether it's
Hmm.
the guarantee on the medallion debt, it's inherently politics is intertwined in the yellow cab industry. And you're very right to say that it seems like a tailwind that, when the mayor-elect becomes the mayor, there's going to be a
Yeah,
lot of political and regulatory tailwinds that should help the yellow cab industry and TLC drivers individually. And, there's real kind of upsides to that, to your point.
yeah.
So okay, so if we, as we kind of, I know we've gone a little bit more than an hour, but this is like a very interesting conversation, and appreciate it. Is
No,
that
I don't mind it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's amazing, and I hope some lender listens to this and helps you out. It gets you a nice like 25-year amort with a 10-year balloon or something.
Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Hopefully, is that if you had to guess, like we're sitting here 3 years from today. Are you thinking in your mind, you're like the medallion price is whatever the medallion price is, or do you actually have like a price target for the medallion price? Like where you have a gut feeling like you're saying, like you do need a bit of quote unquote speculation in the market, meaning that people have to, people believe that this asset class has value. It's
Hmm.
like speculating in Long Island City when real estate was developing. It's like a similar concept. Do you think this is like going like you're hoping that it's like a three handle, four handle, 400,000, $300,000, or are you not really thinking about it? You'll kind of see where it goes, or do you have your internal hopes about where it goes?
I mean, you know, everyone has a dream, but like I don't have a price target, but I would just, base it on what a person is able to make off the medallion and then how much they value that return at. So if you can make 30,000, 40,000 doing nothing, just owning the medallion, leasing it out a year, and then if you have 5 or 7 of those, you scale up. If the person values that at 200, 300, whatever it is, they have to decide. But for me personally, um, you know, it has more to do with monthly, right? So if the monthly financing payment is doable, like 2,000 at most, 2,000 a month, I would buy that medallion. So that's how I look at it. I don't really look at it as, this is my 401k, this is my Roth or whatever. I do look at it as, this is a business. If I want to operate this business, this is how much I'm willing to just pay to have this business and operate this business because
It's
I know how
almost,
much I can make.
you're almost approaching it like a real estate asset, effectively,
Yeah,
like a form of like cash flow and, all of that
yeah.
stuff. And so, okay, I feel like we could do a whole nother podcast about like many, many other topics, but
Hmm.
I think this has been really helpful, Harvir. So I really appreciate you kind of laying this all out for us. And like, do you have any kind of, is there something we didn't cover? Like I think we kind of covered what the politicians can do or policymakers can do, but is there something that you think is like missed into, I write a lot about the industry, and I try to cover all the bases. Is there anytime like you're reading the articles, whether it's mine or Bloomberg's or Crane's or whoever's, and you're like, no one talks about this, or, why is no one talking about this? Do you think there's something we're missing? I think one thing we brought up was the financing angle, like that new financing. Is there anything else that you feel like should be discussed more?
Well, again, it is that I think there's this assumption where people believe that it's a bit of like a Luddite industry where, these people are living in the past, they're going to get replaced by robots, self-driving cars. I think that misconception has also scared off institutions from investing because they're also investing in Waymo, they're also investing in Zeekr or whatever these other companies are. Uh, they're fully, I believe, under the assumption that there's no future or in the near term or in the midterm or whatever for yellow cab industries where, and I do disagree because you do have the um, exclusivity of picking up street hails. You have the exclusivity of having a lot at airports where you're able to easily be dispatched to terminals, and that can't be replicated, I don't believe, by Waymo, where a person stands on the corner, raises their hand, and you have a cab at your disposal. That to me is the edge that yellow cabs have, and that many institutions and investors, I don't think they're seeing it properly. They're not taking a good look at it. So that's that.
No, I think I almost feel like I used to be in the finance world. I feel like you could have been a hedge fund manager in another life. I think you're kind of making this very thoughtful kind of contrarian bet, similar to, what Marblegate did, when they made such a big bet, on the industry. And I think the one takeaway I have from this, because I honestly learned a lot from this. I knew some of the things you were talking about, but the way you specifically broke it down and some of the thoughts you shared, honestly, net, just my gut reaction to this is it's always a positive sign if someone who owns an asset would want more of the asset and they just needs like little stuff that needs to happen. That's
Yeah.
always a positive sign. You're not trying to say, I made a mistake and I want to get rid of this. You're almost saying like, if someone just gave me this solution, like I'll buy more, I'll buy
Yeah.
another medallion, which I think is very encouraging to hear.
Oh no,
So,
I'm not
yeah,
looking to either, I'm not looking for exit liquidity or finding a schmuck to take over the medallion that I'm trying to get out of.
yeah.
I am very much bullish.
And you have no, you do, I guess I should, last question would be, you don't, if you did buy another medallion, you feel like you could find a driver. Like that's not an issue.
No, I mean the driver would be me. So my it would be like my father drives that, whatever his schedule he wants to drive it on, and then I drive it with my schedule, whatever I want the schedule to be. So it would be that. Like there's no like if I want to work Monday, he wants to work Monday, we both could work Monday. It would be that.
And let's say let's say you bought a third medallion. Would you have confidence that yes, somehow, some way you can find other drivers to
Yeah.
drive the yellow cab? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
It would be
listen,
hard to maintain it's very hard to have a driver for a long time because eventually they will want to own their own medallion. That's totally fine. But yes, I don't think there's a shortage of drivers.
that's what I'm seeing on the Uber, Lyft, FHV side of the equation, that there's no shortage of drivers. Um, and no, I mean, this has been really interesting, Harvir. I really appreciate it. And if people want to reach out to you, is there like an email address they can reach out to you? I can include it, in the show notes, or would you prefer, they can obviously reach out to me and I'll get in connection with you, because I do think if there's a lender out there, hopefully just practically speaking, they can
Hmm.
contact you. What's the best way to kind of reach you?
Well, first of all, I do want to thank you for having me and giving me an opportunity to speak so transparently, and I am thankful for that. But as for communications, I think like I can give you my email address, but if they do reach out and they're more comfortable, having a conversation with you, thinking, all right, is this guy crackpot or anything. I think they might be more comfortable speaking with you first before they reach out to me. So you can give my email or you can,
Oh yeah. Okay. So what I'll
whatever
do is,
works.
yeah. Okay. What I'll do is, I don't think they're gonna think, especially after seeing this, they probably would want to do business with you. But everybody can email info@automarketplace.com, and then we'll directly connect you with Harvir. But Harvir, listen, this has been a very interesting kind of this insight you gave. I don't think this
Hmm.
is anywhere on the internet. Maybe it ends up in a Reddit thread. You never know that. this kind of insight, is that kind of unique. So really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully we can
And I
do.
just want to say one thing,
Yeah.
just one last thing. It's more like a PSA. It doesn't really have much to do with the conversation we've had. That there's an app when you go to JFK trips, pick up trips from JFK. You can go into the lot, or you can go on the app and get it put into a queue. And then once you're called, you're ready to be called, then you go to JFK. So a lot of drivers, what they're doing is getting a clicker app. So where they're because there's a limit, there's a cap to how many people can be in queue, and to get into queue, you just have to keep clicking physically to get into queue, because it's a cap of like 2,500. So what some drivers are doing is they're getting a clicker app and they're just like spamming it so they'll get into queue. The reason I'm saying that is, had a conversation with the person who's managing this app, and he informed me that the people that are using these clicker apps, the TLC knows about this, and the Port Authority knows about this because it's logged. They see like 1,000 clicks a second. That's not possible. So they will be. They're considering it. They will be fining the drivers or suspending the airport tag on those people that are using these apps. So just a PSA.
No, that's actually an incredibly important PSA. I'm glad you actually mentioned that because there's actually, as you know, there was like multiple kind of line. There's always like a line skipping game, queue skipping game going on at JFK. So yeah, I think that's a very important PSA because it's kind of like why risk your license? Why risk a fine for like clicking? And so I'm actually very glad that you gave that PSA. So Harvir, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. And hopefully we'll speak again soon and we can talk about the medallion market again.
Hopefully. Thank you.